Welcome everyone. My name is Dr. Alvin Berger. I am the co-founder of LifeSense products. I am pleased to share with you the exciting clinical findings with our GlucoLogic tea. I'd like to start with an abstract of the study. LifeSense is the only company in the world, to our knowledge, using patented, clinically proven ingredient Reducose in a functional black tea. This is not a pill for those of you who do not like swallowing pills. Many of us eat too much sugar and too much starch in our diet. This leads to elevated blood sugar, which is bad for our health. We need a new tool to lower our blood sugar. That tool is GlucoLogic tea containing Reducose. Reducose works by partly blocking the breakdown of food carbohydrates in the gut, decreasing the glycemic index of dietary carbs. This lowers post-meal blood glucose and insulin responses by an amazing 40%, which is great for our health. Fast carbs become slow carbs. Maintaining healthy blood sugar levels is super important for optimal health. It reduces insulin resistance, prediabetes, type 2 diabetes, weight gain and food cravings, and lowers energy swings, to name a few. For the remainder of the presentation, we will show you the blood glucose lowering benefits of GlucoLogic tea in 2 subjects consuming diverse carbohydrate-rich foods. Another way to think about our goal in controlling blood sugar is to get off what we call the blood sugar roller coaster ride. What we mean is when you consume processed sugars and starches in the diet, your blood sugar is going up and down all day long. And so you get feelings of energy and then low energy, high energy, low energy. And then when you overshoot the baseline value, you end up feeling really low in your energy level. To improve this situation, what we want to do is consume a diet that does not contain very high levels of these sugary foods and simple starches. So as shown in the bottom, if we consume this type of diet, the blood sugar goes up and down, but the peaks are much lower and the blood sugar goes up more gradually and comes down more gradually. This is what we're trying to accomplish, and this allows us to have more time in range in that 70 to 140 milligram per deciliter value we showed in the previous slide. Now in this slide, I'd like to summarize the materials and methods that were used in this small pilot study. The subjects were a man, 63 years old, and a woman, 58 years old, who were fasted overnight for 10 to 12 hours. Blood glucose was measured with a Dexcom G7 continuous glucose monitor that was inserted several hours or the night before testing. Blood glucose was then monitored on an Apple iPhone with the Dexcom G7 application. Dexcom G7 Clarity was then used to track start and end blood glucose and other key points. In the morning after the 10 to 12 hour fast, the subjects consumed a single food item with 46 to 85 grams net carb, with different amounts and types of simple sugars and starches. The following day, the same food item was consumed, but with 1 serving of GlucoLogic tea, which provided 250 milligrams of Reducose, which was consumed concurrently with the food item. Between pairs of days, food items were consumed at the same time or up to 56 minutes apart. The man and woman consumed the same food items, except the man consumed a brownie in one of the tests and the woman consumed matzah in one of the tests. Rice and matzah were consumed at double the labeled portions on the package in order to emulate what might be consumed by the general public. The results are shown graphically in the slides to follow. Each pair of days are shown stacked, aligned by start time, with the data shown for 6 a.m. to 3 p.m., with the time of consumption to 4 hours post-consumption highlighted in a gray zone. So to summarize all the results for the two subjects, with Cheerios, we found that there was a 16 to 24% decrease in peak blood glucose with the tea, which is highly beneficial. We also found that there were slower declines from the peak blood glucose values with the tea, which is also beneficial. Decreases in postprandial blood glucose peaks, slower declines from peak blood glucose benefit the time in range. That's that 70 to 140 milligram per deciliter value that we spoke about, and would also potentially lower hemoglobin A1C, which is a longer-term marker of controlled blood glucose. In terms of the rice, we similarly found a very impressive 26 to 46% decrease in peak blood glucose, and this is also beneficial. With fries, there was a 28% decrease in peak blood glucose, but for unclear reasons, this was only seen with the man. There was a decrease in secondary peaks and slower declines from peak blood glucose, and this is also beneficial. With the matzah, there was a 39% decrease in peak blood glucose, also beneficial. There was no change with the bagel, which we speculate could be due to some pre-processing of the starches, which makes it so that the active ingredient in the tea, Reducose, could not exert its normal competitive absorption advantage in decreasing blood glucose. With the brownie, there was no change in blood glucose, and we think this could be due to the fact that the brownie contains mostly simple sugars rather than starches. So overall, there was a 16 to 39% decrease in peak blood glucose values with the tea, which is highly beneficial. There were slower declines from the peak blood glucose in some cases, which is also beneficial. These decreases in peak blood glucose, slower declines in blood glucose, have benefits for blood sugar management and weight management, and would also benefit sustained energy. Similar results have been observed in quite a few clinical trials that were performed with the active ingredient Reducose in separate clinical trials. So this shows that the Reducose in the tea is also highly efficacious in reducing blood glucose. To conclude, in a 63-year-old man with impaired fasting glucose, which is a pre-diabetes marker, and a 58-year-old woman with no impairments in blood glucose regulation, Reducose-containing tea, known as GlucoLogic tea, beneficially reduced postprandial, primary and secondary blood glucose peaks, and likely slowed starch digestion when starchy-rich foods were provided at the same time. This highly beneficial result is consistent with results observed in numerous clinical trials performed previously with Reducose as an active ingredient present in pill form or in other food forms, some of which are shown in the references at the end of this slide deck. The tea was effective against many of the starchy foods that were evaluated. However, it was not effective against the starch-rich, gluten-free bagel that was provided, and we speculate that this could be due to the food processing that made the starches resistant, retrograded, or fiber-like, or because the bagel was also rich in fiber. The tea was not effective against the brownie, a gluten-free brownie actually, that was provided to the man, likely because it provided simple sugars, monosaccharide sugars, and Reducose works mainly to slow reduced digestion of starches and complex sugars. Overall, results show that GlucoLogic tea provided with starch-rich and complex sugar-rich foods can beneficially reduce blood glucose peaks and beneficially decrease the sharpness of blood glucose peaks, meaning slower rises and slower declines in blood glucose. GlucoLogic tea could help people maintain more time in that 70 to 140 milligram per deciliter optimal range known as time in range or TIR, and potentially reduce hemoglobin A1C, which is a longer-term marker of optimal blood glucose. There are many benefits to being in this optimal blood glucose range, including improved weight management, improved cardiovascular health, improved gut health, and much more. Please see the next slide to view this graphically.